Negotiations are a central part of peacekeeping.
Là, ça a commencé à se pousser, puis là, ça jouait rough. Puis là, à un moment donné, le commandant croate...
Then it started getting kind of rough. Then at one point, the Croat commander, he said, Chico, Rico, I'm not sure. Chico took his 9mm and he placed it against Sergeant Caron's face. And I could see the look in the Croat's eyes. And it didn't look as if... It didn't seem like it would bother him at all to pull the trigger and to score a UN soldier. So by then it was very, very tense. At that point I told Sergeant Caron, stop that. Give him your weapon. It ends here. I said it's too much. We're walking too thin a rope. We stop all this right here. So then from that moment, they took all our weapons. They were all placed in a pile. They counted them. They counted us. Then after that, I went to talk with their commander in our observation tower. I was alone with him, and I spoke with him there for a little while, maybe 5-10 minutes. After that, there came like a feeling of respect. Yeah, I think it was more respect than trust that emerged between me and him. Then as a mark of good faith, he returned my 9mm to me fully loaded. Then maybe 15 minutes after that, they gave all of us our weapons back.
Whatever the mission and your rank, you should know the basic principles of negotiating. Once on the ground, you will be facing situations which could quickly take a turn for the worse. While it is better to negotiate at the lowest level possible, it must be remembered that it can be very effective to escalate the negotiations if a successful conclusion cannot first be reached. At the lower levels, it is the nourishing of contacts that will be beneficial over time. Negotiation sequences can be initiated at a high level, but will not succeed if they cannot be applied at the lower levels.
The section that lives on OP should be able to dialogue with the section commander or the platoon commander that's across them on the ground to be able to build up confidence between both of them, knowing that what's going to happen if something is happening when a soldier fires to one another.
Pay attention to what you say and do. When emotions run high, a situation can easily break down. Remember that your blue identification does not give you the right to give orders to the local forces. Always use caution and tact. Always speak from a UN rather than a Canadian point of view. On peacekeeping missions, you represent 184 countries, not just one. Before committing yourself to anything, make sure your actions are in line with the objectives of your commander and with existing agreements. Try to associate your objectives with those agreements and deals that have been concluded. This can only strengthen your bargaining position. Higher headquarters must be kept informed throughout so that timely support and guidance can be provided on short notice. The need for negotiating will often arise at roadblocks and checkpoints along a convoy route. In situations like these, negotiating is unrehearsed and spontaneous. Success depends on your personality, powers of reasoning, friendly persuasion, common sense, tact and patience, particularly tact and patience.
Halfway there, we had to go through a mountain pass and climb a mountain. Then at the top of that mountain, there was what we call a warlord who controlled that mountain. He was the one who decided whether we could pass or not. And once we got to the top of the mountain, he decided we couldn't pass.
As the APC approached the checkpoint, we were stopped, and this individual cocked his weapon and started to make threats that he wanted to kill the journalists. For whatever reason, nobody was really sure. The information I was gathering was being passed to me kind of in a broken format through a translator. So at this point, I was by myself with a driver and 3 journalists. and a Serbian individual, a civilian with a weapon, who had intent to perhaps cause harm to the individuals. And I mean, this is a very common situation. The individual was not pointing his weapon at anyone, so there's really nothing you could do, but you had to be ready. His weapon was cocked, he had his weapon in the air, and he was talking very openly that he wanted to harm these people. So myself and my driver were ready to react. So however, through a little bit of negotiation and just acting calm and effectively staring him down, he eventually cooled down and he withdrew back into a building, and we were able to proceed, of course always keeping our eyes to the rear to make sure that he, once our backs were turned, he did not fire at us.
Prior to setting up the convoy, familiarize yourself with the itinerary and the checkpoints along the way. Find out all you can about the belligerents you are likely to encounter. They're probably well known by the people in the area who are familiar with their pattern of behavior. Your personal contacts are important. They can help you establish a rapport with local commanders. Try to find out about the people in the area. For instance, is the local leader a soccer fan? Does he like rock music? Is he likely to display a macho attitude, or is he a reasonable guy? Go over each piece of the puzzle. Every detail might be important. You should also be familiar with the United Nations military observers operating in your area. They can provide you with all kinds of useful information. Your translator is an important part of the negotiating process and must be briefed on your objectives. Make sure he or she knows exactly what you are trying to achieve. This will prevent misunderstandings and allow you to get down to the business at hand. When it becomes obvious that you will have to stop and negotiate your passage, review how you're going to approach the negotiating process. Imagine who you will be dealing with. Ask yourself who the person making the decisions is. Keep your translator informed about your intentions.
So our commander, who was in the lead vehicle, got out and went to see what the problem was, to find out why we couldn't pass through. So we waited. We didn't know what was going on. I was in the 7th vehicle back. There had to be an ambulance in case something happened. Then they began to negotiate, to talk, and it was taking a long time, and then finally they decided they wouldn't let us through for such and such a reason. Then, to show us he meant business, our commander said, well, I'm going through anyway. So they took these children and these old people and positioned them in front of us to make sure we wouldn't pass through.
Find the person who is in charge. Remember to follow the usual military courtesies. Always use respectful language. It is essential to learn basic phrases in the local language. Use them as often as possible. It helps break the ice and start things off on the right foot. Perhaps you have met these people before. Refer to the encounters, if they were friendly. The exchange of small gifts can sometimes be useful to set the stage for negotiations. Offering a cigarette, for example, is often appreciated and can help reduce tension and establish a climate of trust. In some countries, it may be traditional to offer or share an alcoholic drink. If your orders prohibit the consumption of alcohol, an explanation of why you must decline the hospitality will avoid either offending anyone or causing any misinterpretation. Whatever the situation, you must remain cautious and use your judgment. Most importantly, you must never appear to be bribing your way through. The rule of thumb is reward cooperation. Don't buy it. Get to the heart of the matter. Why are you being prevented from going through? Be well aware of the latest agreements. Your position must be rock solid. When conducting negotiations, soldiers must speak directly to their counterparts, not to the assigned translator. The translator is not the negotiator. Make sure that all your papers are in order. Adopt a position of authority. Be firm while remaining polite. Keep in mind that your ultimate goal is to get the convoy through. Don't let discussions get off track. It is especially unwise to venture onto subjects of a political nature. It must not become a matter of who is right and wrong. Stick to the military facts. Remain calm. and professional at all times.
We met another one who was holding a bridge that took us back to Sarajevo. When we came to the bridge, he wouldn't let us through either. Where he was concerned, it was his district, and like the other guy, he wouldn't let us go down to Sarajevo. I remember I was looking in my rearview mirror and I saw the warlord coming up from behind, climbing all the way to the front, and start negotiating with the commander. Then the talk got very loud. The commander signaled the snipers, who then positioned themselves on the mountain around us for protection so that they wouldn't open fire on us. At least there'd be somebody there to protect us. And the commander spoke with the guy, chatted with the guy. It took some time, at least an hour and a half, 2 hours. Then we succeeded in passing through.
Similar tensions often arise at supply distribution centers. The same techniques apply here as well.
And then there are times when the population tends to become aggressive, and they'll even go as far as to suggest ways of getting you to give out humanitarian aid by force, by threatening you, by pointing weapons at you. It can be as silly as throwing stones or things like that, but there's always some kind of escalation that happens, and it happens very quickly.
Maintaining a supply distribution center in operation involves several parties, such as non-governmental organizations, volunteer and charitable civilian agencies, the local authorities, and military forces. Should a belligerent party shut down a food center in your sector, you may be the one who will need to reopen it. This may not always be easy. You may need to deal with different levels, such as regular troops, militias, local gang members, as well as the local police force, which is often biased.
That's one thing that's very difficult to understand when you're on your first UN mission. You think you'll get there and the people will greet you with open arms. That's not quite the way it happens. And it doesn't take you very long to realize it. It's a little frustrating, but you have to learn to live with it. When you put yourself in the other guy's place, you realize that we're seen as privileged.
Find out who is in charge, who has the authority to reopen the center. Follow the usual courtesies of military protocol. Remain polite but firm. Empathize with these people. Respect their point of view. Whatever the conflict may be, they have probably gone through some hard times. Show consideration, but do not make promises you cannot keep. Find out what they want. If you can help them, so much the better. If not, you will have to negotiate a compromise or bring the matter to the attention of a superior. Whatever the situation, don't allow things to reach a point where you might act unprofessionally. Again, know your drills, immediate actions, and rules of engagement. In certain situations, raising your voice and displaying signs of impatience can be an effective negotiating tactic. However, be cautious. Never make a local leader lose face in front of his troops. If the situation does not seem to improve, you can always break off talks and resume them later. Observation post duties often involve restricting the movement of local forces and civilian populations through a particular area. Sometimes deals are reached between opposing sides, allowing civilians to cross lines for family visits or the exchange of prisoners. Your role is to ensure safe passage according to the previously established ground rules and to protect all parties from harassment, abuse, or undue pressure from either side. Kindness, firmness, and absolute neutrality are the rule. Favoritism must be avoided at all cost. Never make an accusation unless you or another member of the UN forces has witnessed reprehensible acts. Good negotiations can save many lives, especially when undertaken at the early stages of a conflict. At this stage, belligerents are not likely to talk to each other. Peacekeeping forces act as intermediaries and must commute between the headquarters of the opposing leaders. After a while, it will be possible to arrange meetings between opposing parties, at least to settle the most pressing problems. You or your commander could play a role in such negotiations. Success in such negotiations depends a great deal on adequate preparation. Make sure nothing is missing. Refreshments, as well as troops providing security. Many points must be settled beforehand. Inform all parties about the time and location of the meeting, the agenda, the identity of each participant, agreements concerning weapons allowed at the meeting, and the availability of interpreters. Your commander may ask you to do some research on the subject of the negotiations, the background of the conflict, the personalities of participants, their respective positions, and the prospects of reaching common ground. Again, your personal contacts with the local population can prove to be very useful. If you must deal with a subject you are unfamiliar with, ask an expert and include him or her in your mission. When in doubt, check with your commanding officer. During negotiations, your job is to assist the parties in reaching a peaceful settlement. Set an example in courtesy and cooperation. Good personal relationships could make all the difference. Respect the ground rules of negotiating. Never lie. Never take sides. Stick to the military facts. Those are the keys to success. Finally, always remember this. Regardless of the efforts you may be making to be unbiased, any act of friendliness or kindness directed at one of the belligerents may be construed as favoritism. As seen in the past, this perception can be communicated to the media and used against UN personnel. Unfortunately, this is a reality of conflicts today. Knowing where to draw the line during negotiations is a skill that can only be developed through intense training and experience.
Principles that you try to keep on the ground are as simple as staying truthful with the people you're talking to, not going beyond the information that you have and the authority that you have on the ground. Keeping as informed as possible as what's happening on higher commands and what's the information that's been circulating at the general population level, so that they'll be able to verify that information that you give them, and that at that moment your credibility is established, and a certain trust is established with these people, so that they'll believe you. Essentially is to stay firm, keep your positions, and trying to convince them as I would try to convince you to buy my whole car.
Canadian soldiers must use their negotiating skills in trouble spots throughout the world. Effective negotiating at all levels is the key element to resolving any conflict. When they are planned properly and skillfully handled, negotiations strengthen the UN's mandate and contribute to the achievement of lasting peace. Particular attention should be paid to the following principles. Always use caution, tact, and respectful language. Act in accordance with your orders and existing agreements. Keep your superiors informed of the situation. Know the people and organizations you are dealing with. Stick to the facts and use your judgment.